My name is Andrej Lapajne. I'm the CEO and founder at Zebra BI. I used to be a consultant, so I've been doing a lot of consulting work, training and mentoring, and even implementation of BI systems, reporting systems, dashboards, planning systems. So I'm kind of an old school OLAP guy. But in the last 3 years, I'm focusing on Power BI. My main topic is data visualization, actually. So, I'm mostly interested in data visualization. I studied painting and information science, so I kind of find the sweet spot here with the information design. So that's kind of my specialty. And my passion lies here. And yeah, I'm also involved in the IBCS community. I have to say that I've been doing that since 2006, right? So now it's already the 14th year since I met an important person in my life that I will introduce a little bit later in my session, which kind of changed my life, actually. And it's related to the IBCS. All right, so that's a short introduction about myself. So I'm here today to present IBCS compliant reporting in Power BI. So what is IBCS? You will hear this acronym today a couple of times, I guess. So for now, let me just say that IBCS stands for International Business Communication Standards. I suspect that most of you already have heard about them, but if not, today is the day to learn about those standards, what they are, and so on. So in short, this is a really interesting initiative and recommendation to standardize business reports, dashboards, and presentations in companies. So it's a global initiative. A lot of big customers, especially in Germany and German-speaking countries, but also abroad in the United States and other countries, a lot of those companies have already accepted the IBCS standard as their preferred and go-to standard for internal reporting, which means that, their reports kind of look similar. They're using similar types of charts. They're using similar, colors and shapes and so on in order to make the reports and dashboards more understandable, more actionable, and consistent. All right, so this will be the topic of my session today, with a special focus on how to implement those types of reports in Power BI. Okay, so a typical report in Power BI, or a dashboard in Power BI, or an analysis in Power BI is very colorful, which can be, of course, nice, and it can be helpful, but there tend to be some problems, data visualization problems in those types of reports and dashboards in Power BI. For example, here I'm showing this is an example of a sales dashboard that reports on sales and profit for a certain period of time, right? And now if you observe this, if you try to understand this dashboard, what does it tell you? I mean, we have some breakdown of the sales by state and province. So, an attempt at a geographical representation here. Then we have the inevitable, pie chart or a donut chart in this case, that kind of tries to present the share of states, by sales, for example. Then we have some area charts, column charts and stacked column charts, and the tree maps are also very popular in Power BI. So, this might look nice or good or beautiful or ugly. I mean, it's a question of taste. So I'm not going to discuss, the taste today. It does not make any sense. But I do have a much more important question, right? If I'm now the sales manager, or the manager, or the CEO of this company, and I'm getting this report, I'm reading it, right, each month, each day, each week. Of course, I'm interested. My first question would be, all right, what is actually my sales performance? Is my sales performance good or bad? Okay, that's the first purpose of any report or a dashboard. What's the performance? Is it good or bad? So this is the first question that people will ask. And if you take a look at this picture, can you really tell if the sales performance now was good or bad for this particular period? Can you guess? It's really hard to say. It's hard to say. I mean, I have all the breakdowns by state, by province, by product category, by subcategory, customer segment, and so on. Probably all the dimensions, all the needed data fields are here, right? But I still cannot answer the very, very simple question, is my performance good or bad? Like, are we doing better than last year? Is the sales according to my plan? If it is, is it 10% above the plan, or is it right on the plan? Or maybe we have a huge problem and we are 30% below the plan. I don't know. I do not know. Why? Because there is no comparison. So the problem number one of this dashboard here is it has absolutely no comparisons, visual comparisons here in charts, right? That's why it's really hard to say whether my performance is good or bad, right? You always need to compare your data, provide the context of your data, provide benchmarks, plans, calculate the variances and show the variances and so on. So I don't know if my performance is good or bad. How good, how bad, I have no idea. We might be 50% of the target, which would be a catastrophe, right? But this dashboard would look exactly the same. It would be very colorful, lots of colors, but there's no attention, no visual attention on a specific, like, good or bad area of my business here. Why is this good or bad? I don't know. What are we going to do about it? I don't know. If I don't really understand the performance, how can I plan certain actions? How can I focus on the right product category or customer segment and so on, where we really should focus, if I don't understand the dashboard, right? So that's a typical problem in Power BI. Unfortunately, there are lots of visuals in Power BI. They're very colorful and so on, but they are not insightful enough in order to understand the business side, the business performance, right? So now if I show you another picture, this is a completely different approach at visualizing and communicating the information now. It looks very simple and it's very clean, and there are probably only 3 or 4 colors here, right? But if I now ask the same 4 questions, is my performance good or bad? Well, I see sales versus plan here, and we are below the plan. So there's a little red here, so it's minus 1.1 million below the plan. So my performance, not completely good, right? How good, how bad? Well, exactly 1.1 million below the plan for this particular time period here. Why? Why is my performance, why are we 1.1 million below the plan? Well, I do have a breakdown here, and I also have the explanation for this variance, which is very important, right? You need to explain this gap, right? And yeah, so I have some simple charts here, red and green charts. They are so-called plus minus charts. And my visual attention, right, is drawn right here right here at this bar, which is of course the longest bar. So my visual attention goes here, and I immediately understand that, there's a problem in the women's clothing category, for example, in this particular retail, chain. So this is actually data for a retailer that sells different types of clothes, right? And so I understand why, mostly because of this product category, right? What are we going to do about it? My fourth question, right? Well, at this point, I still don't know, right? But Power BI, of course, has a lot of additional options that would also explain this. Like, for example, if I had a nice report page tooltip now that would appear when my mouse is over this product category, and then provide more details like, okay, what's going on within the product category of women's clothing, like which exact products are problematic, or maybe there are certain retail locations, shops where this is a problem, or something else, right? So this is how I would get to the detail, or maybe I would have an option here to drill down through the content, drill down, or maybe drill through to another detailed page that would explain what is going on within this product category that is problematic, right? And this is how I feel that the dashboards should work. So there's always those same 4 questions. So I guess those 4 questions are a very good test for any kind of report and dashboard in Power BI, right? If you can answer those 4 questions on every page that you are creating and building in Power BI, and if you can answer those questions fast, then this means that your reports and dashboards are first understandable and second actionable, right? And these are the 2 words that I would really like you to remember, after this session. So is it understandable? Is it actionable? Now, why are most Power BI dashboards that I have seen out there not understandable and not actionable? There are lots of reasons for that. So for another example here, when you look at this picture, now this is more clean and it's nicer according to my taste, right? But how do I understand this? I mean, first of all, I do see this line here, and the line chart, it goes down. So it looks like, whoa, we are going down with our sales or something like that. And this is not good for sure, right? And then you read all the labels and try to understand what does this actually mean? Okay, and then you understand, okay, this is actually not time. It's just a breakdown of my revenue and gross margin by business unit, okay? So I have my business units here, and it's not a trend that is going down. It's simply that this business unit here is simply a smaller business unit, right? I still don't know whether, this is good or bad because I don't have the comparison for this exact business unit. I mean, it could be a completely new business unit. We've just opened it, last month, and it's normal that it has, such a small amount of revenue, right? Or, it's one of our most important business units, but actually, in this particular period, all the sales went down to almost zero, right? These are completely different situations, and I don't know here, but the initial problem here, I mean, the technical problem or the problem of the data visualization is that I'm simply using the wrong chart. So I should not use the line chart, for a breakdown by a business unit. So the line chart is always suggest certain trends, are things going up and down and so on. That's how we intuitively would make an interpretation when we see a line chart, right? So wrong chart types, and then things like, the tree maps here. What do I understand from this big tree map here? Or the Marimekko chart, as it's also called, right? So All right, it's a breakdown by revenue, a breakdown of revenue by product. So what do I understand? I understand that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and something, 5 maybe products here. And the breakdown, okay, most of the revenue is in this Primus product, right? So it looks like a little bit more than half. Okay, I understand that, right? But is this good or bad? I don't know, So I'm simply using almost 1/4 of my whole real estate, of my whole dashboard here, just to visualize 4 or maybe 5 numbers, right? And this red here, which draws most of my attention actually, right? I see all this, the sea of red here. It actually represents a blank product category, right? Which is, it does not tell me anything really. What is this, right? So those are typical problems in Power BI. Then I see a lot of labels being displayed diagonally. This is also a good indication that something is wrong with your charts in Power BI. When you see this, maybe you should think about turning the chart around for 90 degrees and not always use just, bar charts or sorry, the column charts, but instead use bar charts with a vertical axis, right? If it's not time, of course, time should run left to right, whereas, everything else basically should run from top to bottom. And then things will automatically become more understandable. And, things like this is way too many colors. Way too many colors. There's simply no way how I cannot even read what the specific categories mean. And also here, I mean, you don't see any trends or comparisons here. So it's more or less useless, really. Yeah, so these are the typical problems. So one problem maybe the most frequent problem is the wrong chart orientation. Like, for example, this issue that I have just mentioned, always using column charts, and then you have to simply turn the labels diagonally, and then of course people will read diagonally, right? So I mean, your boss will now read like this, and then people will have sore necks and so on. So if you hate your boss, I mean, that's fine, but it's not considered a good practice in data visualization. So if it's not time, you should actually turn the chart around, and then you don't have the problems with the labels. Everything is neatly aligned. The labels can be standard, your standard 12 pixels or 14 pixels or 10 pixels, whatever the situation is, and you can simply nest those colors here, and then you can add more information on the left and the right and so on, right? So what I have demonstrated here is just one very, very tiny detail, right? What types of charts you should use. Like, for example, we call this the time versus structure rule, which means that whenever you're presenting time in your reports and dashboards, time should simply run left to right, which is normal, right? And then you always use charts with horizontal axes when you're displaying time, meaning daily trends or monthly, weekly, annual, quarterly, and so on. For everything else, use charts with vertical axes, which we call this the structure breakdown, like sales by by customer, by country, by product, by business unit, profit center, accounts, cost centers, and so on. Always like from top to bottom, which means that now I have one simple rule, how to turn the charts around. Okay, and now of course there are many more details when you are constructing your reports, like bad choice of charts is one typical problem, and then if I try to identify like top 7 problematic areas that I have sort of seen in the Power BI world. The number two would probably be poor labeling. So like having too much labels, or having no labels at all, or having diagonal labels and so on, right? So this is another whole area, right? How do you label your data labels, axis labels, and so on. Then, inconsistent colors, typically way too many colors, and the colors do not mean the same. So, you're using red just because, it's in your color theme, and then Power BI will randomly assign a certain color, like we saw the red color for the blank category, right? This is a pure chance. It's just a random. It's been assigned from the color scale. It's not used for a certain meaning, right? Which is something that we actually want to achieve in reports. Then number four, not showing the comparisons and not explicitly visualizing the variances, right? The red and green changes, is it good or bad? How good, how bad? How is it better than planned? How much better than planned? Or, how much growth from previous year, and so on. So this is another area. Then in Power BI world, this is very, very symptomatic in Power BI. So most of the time, I see the tables completely separated from charts, which is a typical situation, I would say, also in other BI tools. It's not really just a problem of Power BI. Of course, it's a general problem of reporting. So you might have a very visual dashboard with just the charts and lots of pie charts and no labels and so on. And then on the other hand, you have those, Power BI matrices or Power BI tables that are pure text and just a lot of numbers. So it's like a sea of numbers, and and there are completely two separate worlds, right? When in fact you could join the two words together and combine tables and charts, which is a nice technique to create reports, as we will see in a moment. Number six, there is no scaling concept. I will explain this. If you have two charts, typically in Power BI, they have absolutely no relation between one another, right? So you just have simply two completely separate charts with two completely separate scaling. So in Power BI, there's absolutely no concept of somehow synchronizing the charts and synchronizing the scale, which means like the y-axis in charts, for example. And then maybe the last of the seven top mistakes would be low information density. Like we saw with the tree map, right? It's 1/4 of the whole dashboard, and it just represents 4 or 5 numbers, right? In the same space, you could communicate much more information. So lots of, and these are just the top 7 issues. There are much more issues. In fact, there are so many issues that we need to call a doctor to help us. And the doctor that will help us is actually Dr. Rolf Hichert. That's his name. This guy will help us. And this is where my story actually begins. I met this guy. I met Rolf in 2006, and as I have mentioned in the introduction, it has really changed my life, because this man had his life work actually was thinking about those problems and trying to solve those problems. And I think he was quite successful because he has come up with a solution. He has come up first with certain rules that he called success rules, which actually define, how, certain rules and recommendations that you follow. And if you follow them, your reports will become understandable and actionable, right? So these are things like, which charts to use for certain situation, how to combine charts with tables, and a lot of details actually. And this was a lifelong project of Dr. Hichert that in the end culminated in the IBCS standards, right? So he just gained some momentum. We joined his movement, and yeah, this resulted in quite a comprehensive set of recommendations and rules that we today call the International Business Communication Standards. So at this point, maybe it's time that I illustrate a couple of examples of the IBCS compliant reports. So this is already now, this is actually a web page. So I'm using an embedded report on a web page. So this is actually my Power BI. And as you will see, I have some IBCS compliant reports done and created in Power BI. This would be one typical example, maybe the first, most simple and probably the most well-known example of a Power BI, of an IBCS report, which now has a monthly time series. So this is like my monthly sales, or actually this is contribution margin by month. So it's a monthly chart, and as you see here, I have some actuals. So this is my actual sales, and then behind it, this little gray shadow behind this column is actually represents the previous year value. Okay, so this is what in IBCS we call the overlapped chart. But as you will see, this chart is like gray, dark gray up until September, right? Because this is my actual month, right? Right now we are in September, for example, and I only have the actuals up until here. But then for the rest of the year, for October, November, December, I have a forecast, right? So I'm also showing the forecast, but of course it looks different than the actual sales. So this is for me a very simple way how to simply distinguish that, this is a different product, different category, right? It's we call it business scenario, so it's not actuals, it's forecast, right? And we always represent in IBCS, we always represent forecasts as hatched, as a hatched pattern here, and the actuals are like a full column, right? And then what we always try to do is present the variances, right? So now this little gap here, this little gap is between the actual and the previous year is actually displayed here. Explicitly calculated, the variance to previous year, and it's shown in a simple plus minus chart in this example, right? So there are many ways how you can display and show and visualize the variances. This is the most simple one, so just plus minus red and green. All right, and here on the top, I have another chart, which is also red and green, but it looks completely different. Why does it look completely different? Because this is now the relative variance. So this is the growth from previous year in percent, right? And because the percentage is a completely different measure than my sales or contribution margin in million euros, right? So percentages are something completely different. It also looks different, right? But so what if I have a different measure, then the chart looks different. But if I'm showing the same concept, then the things look the same. So this is a very simple idea how to, make your charts and reports consistent, right? Because you always do it in the same way. You always, you pick a color, like maybe this green color or another green color, or if you're doing it for the people with color vision deficiencies, maybe you can use blue color instead of green color or something like that. But then once you decide on the colors, you always use the same color for the same meaning, right? Not just assign a color style or a theme in Power BI, but also make sure that you actually apply a specific color from that theme always for the same meaning. right? So this is one of the ideas behind the IBCS standard, right? So you assign the meaning, you kind of standardize it, right? And that's why we call it a standard, actually. So this will be the monthly chart. This is one example. Okay, this is another example. This time, what's the difference between the first one? All right, this one has actuals, and then it has previous year, which is like a light color, right? So the previous year, it's actually a lighter color, a lighter shade of the base color, right? Why is it a lighter color? Yeah, well, because it was last year, so it faded away a little bit already from the last year, right? Whereas if I'm doing a comparison to plan, now I have a different situation. Now I have this sort of a a border or an outline. So my plan here is simply an empty column with a border, which means that it has an outline, because a plan is like an outline for the future. You always plan for the next year, and it's a kind of an outline. So it's an intuitive notation that just simply helps people distinguish between those very basic four scenarios that you will find in most business reports, which is the actuals, the previous year, the plan, and the forecast, right? So the plan it only has the border, and then you need to kind of fill it up with your actuals, right? That's the idea. And then the forecast is somewhere in between, right? So you already know something more than for the business plan, but it's still not the actual. So that's why it's somewhere in the middle. That's why we are using the hatched pattern for this, and we also apply the hatched pattern in the variance, right? Because this variance is not the same as this variance, right? This variance here in May is the variance between actual and my plan. Whereas here, this is the variance between my forecast for December versus my plan, right? That's why also a hatch pattern here in the variance itself, right? So these are now I'm explaining, the basic concepts of data visualization according to the IBCS, and we have lots of rules and recommendations, how to apply what types of shapes and colors in which situation, where to put the labels, how exactly do the labels where should they be placed, how should they be written, right? Like, for example, in a variance like this, the variance is a difference, right? So that's why we have plus here. So this is plus, plus 20 million US dollars, right, on top of my plan here, right? So this is the difference, and then if it's negative, it's minus, right? But also the positive variance has this little plus here. Okay, so these are now the details of charts and so on. And now of course, if this is Power BI now, you can make it interactive, but whatever you do, it will make sense. So you can simply sort and so on. All right, a couple of more examples. So this is probably the most famous IBCS type of report, or it's almost a template, right? So many people are using the exact same type of report for income statements or P&Ls, so the profit and loss analysis in all the tools, right? So the idea here is, if you do it in Excel, or if you do it in Power BI, or if you do it in SAP or any other BI tool, it should really look like this. And what we are doing here is we are using, as you see here, vertical charts. So all of those charts have a vertical axis. And another benefit of charts with vertical axis is that you can actually place them together into tables, right? So this is actually a kind of a table, but only every column is actually visualized, right? So I mean, I could just simply change this to a table and so on, right? And now this vertical waterfall chart just helps me understand the whole calculation of my income statement, right? The whole calculation of my profit and loss. That's why we also call those waterfall charts calculation waterfall charts, right? They're like a visual representation of this calculation. So I have my revenue from licenses, revenue from consulting and maintenance and so on, right? Which kind of, aggregates or sums up to my total sales value here, sales revenue, right? And then I have some costs, which of course, will shrink my revenue down to my operating profit here, and then I have some additional income here, and then some income tax again, and this is how I arrived at a profit after tax, right? So this is now a visual representation here, and this is a very typical IBCS report that is used for any kind of calculations, really mostly for income statements, but also like like calculations of the price calculations and things like that would also work here in this form. All right, a couple more examples, maybe a couple quick examples. So the small multiples is another typical thing that is, like encouraged by the IBCS standard. So the small multiples is a simple concept or a data visualization method when you take just one chart and then you just simply repeat it multiple times for multiple data elements. And this gives you a whole picture, it gives you a better picture because it enables visual comparisons. Now you can understand that, Berlin is the biggest, location in terms of net profit here. And you also understand exactly how much bigger is it, right? Now the scaling concept kicks in, right? Because if this is 344 here, and this is like 134, if you compare visually the size of this column here, you will see that the length of both columns are rendered in exactly the same ratio as the actual numbers, right? I mean, this is pixel perfect scaling here, which means that now I have, maybe 12 or 16 charts that all share the same y-axis. All right, maybe a couple more examples. So this would be, and then of course, now the problem starts. Already this is not possible to do in Power BI really, in native Power BI that is, right? So that's the bad news here. The native Power BI can't handle the scaling, right? There's no scaling concept in Power BI, so you can put like 14, 16 charts on one page, and if you're really good at DAX and you know some tricks in Power BI, then maybe you could even recreate this. It's theoretically, it's actually possible to do it in Power BI if you sort of try to handle the the scaling through a DAX measure, and then you do certain dirty tricks to put that measure in all the charts and so on. But in the end, even this will result in a very slow Power BI report, because Power BI will then, your Power BI page will have like 16 separate charts with very complex DAX behind them. And this will mean 16 separate queries, back to your database. And especially if you're using like direct query, things will become unbearably slow to the point where the whole report will become completely useless. That's a problem now in Power BI. So those are the kind of the reasons why the whole concept of IBCS is really, it's not possible to implement it with native Power BI visuals, right? That's why, of course, we have custom visuals, And the Zebra BI visuals that we are developing, these are all the Zebra BI visuals, of course, then bring all of those, all of these concepts into Power BI, because it's already, this concept is already in the visual. So this is only one visual that has all of those charts rendered. All right, let's see. Then even harder problems start to appear. It may be that certain elements here are much bigger than other elements, right? And this is the nature of business most of the time. It's the Pareto rule. You always have like 20% of your data elements that actually hold 80% of the value, right? So it's a natural distribution, and then. So then maybe you need to do things like this, right? Present one chart. One chart has more space than other charts when you're doing this in a proper scaling, right? So then you need. So this is beyond the normal or the standard small multiple, because it can handle things like this, like the outliers and so on, right? So this whole thing can become quite complex. And this is also one of the reasons why it's really hard to implement IBCS if you don't have special tools for that. Okay. All right. Now, let's see if I have something. Yeah, IBCS also recommends a lot of waterfall charts. One reason for that is that the waterfall charts work well for business people, especially in finance. And why? Because in a waterfall chart, the focus of the waterfall chart is really on the performance, right? So it's the perfect chart for performance management in my view. So for example, here I have the plan, and then I have the variance. So first of all, I have the plan, and then I have my actuals here and so on. And this is my forecast until the end of the year. And I immediately see here the end result. So, all right, we actually plan, we actually see that my forecast here, that we will end our year, in the green for exactly 16.9%, right? And then I also see the details, which elements, in this case, which month contributed in a positive or a negative way to this waterfall chart. And then, at the top, I again have this strange looking chart, which we actually call the lollipop chart, because kind of looks like the lollipop. And again, this represents the relative variance for each particular month, right? So, all right, I guess these are, and then the tables. This will be then the last really important, maybe element of a typical IBCS compliant report. So now the charts here are part of my table. So that there's no separation between charts and tables. We actually bring those two together, and this can typically be, the most useful reports, where you simply have certain, this is my previous year, this is my actual, and then I visualize the variance, because the variance, the difference, the gap, the change, that's the most important information really in any kind of business report and dashboard, right? And that's why, you don't just have a simple, so now if I just collapse this in a simple table, this would look like this, right? All right, I see it's red and green, so it's something, right? But if you really want to quickly understand, what's going on, oh, now I see. Oh, Germany is problematic. Sorry about that, guys. Austria is much better, and so on, right? So you see, this is how the red-green stuff can help, or even maybe you can do it like this, and then sort and things like that, So these are the typical situations where you would combine different types of charts in a table, right? And then you can do it in different ways. So like the IBCS standard would actually recommend that you have the previous year first, like last year, 2019 would be here and 2020 would be here. If you have a different standard, all right, then you can just turn it around. But the IBCS standard would actually recommend also the, the order of columns like this, or maybe you can do it like this. You put the actuals at the end, and then you have the variances in between, which works nicely. If you have, do I have an example like that? Previous year, this is still previous year. Okay, this is the income statement compared to plan. So yeah, maybe something like this, right? Where you have the previous year column, and then you have the actuals here, and then you have the plan here. So you see between the previous year and actual, I have the variances to previous year, the growth rates, and then on the right side, I have my future, like this is my plan, and then I have the variance in between columns, right? But of course, you can also do it in a standard, more standard way where you put previous year and actual and plan, and then put all the variances behind it, right? So, all right, this was a quick run through of like of the typical report types and yeah, report structures or even report templates that IBCS would encourage you to have in your company. Now back to Power BI. Now, as I said, the problem in Power BI is that it's really hard to bring this concept to life. The Power BI does not have the scaling concept. Even things like there are lots of details. Like for example, here in this particular case, I'm doing a breakdown of my revenue compared to the plan by a business unit, right? But because maybe I have a lot of business units, I'm not showing all the business units. That's why I'm only showing like top 6 business units, and then all the rest, everything else, is summed up or aggregated into this others row, right? And those of you who are proficient in Power BI know that it's actually very hard in Power BI to do this, right? You need quite complex DAX to achieve this, right? The standard Power BI filtering, you can filter top 5 business units, but you cannot really calculate this others row. But the advantage of this, and this is of course now the recommendation of the IBCS standard, always show the total, right? This is the so-called METZE rule, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, right? So if you're observing a situation here, you always, the elements always sum up to the total, right? So that's why I also understand, all right, this one is, is good, bad, and so on. But then also I have this, and then this will sum up to my total variance here, right? And now in Power BI, these are now, of course, all the Zebra BI visuals that bring IBCS to Power BI. So these are custom visuals, and they are typically used in business reporting, in sales dashboards, cost reports, all financial reports, income statements, cash flow, and so on, but also in operational reporting, because the IBCS standard can be applied very successfully, actually, also to operational reporting, supply chain reporting, HR reporting, and I have seen it in practice also in like health and safety reports and so on. So because everywhere you have probably situations like this where you need to explain certain differences, even if you don't have a plan, you might have a benchmark, what is good or what is bad, like in supply chain, you might track on-time delivery in percent, which is just a simple percentage, right? But you might have a target or a wish that this should be like 95% or something. So you can use this 95% as a benchmark, as a kind of a target or a plan, right? So you can actually bring many different areas of your business into the umbrella of the standard, and it should work quite well. All right. Do we have any questions up until this point? Maybe it's a good time to take a few questions, and then I would like to do a short demo how you actually work with the visuals, and with a couple of maybe typical examples for the IBCS.
I can't see any questions in written form in the chat right now, but maybe one of the attendees already has a question he or she wants to express. So everyone is welcome to unmute the microphone by themselves and ask the questions they like to. And we discussed earlier that if you're not willing or able to express your question in English, you can just ask in German, and whether Andrej understands it or I will translate it later.
Yeah. So if you have any kind of questions, just unmute yourself. So let's try to make this, interactive. We're a small group, so we can have a discussion or something. So.
Hi, Andrej. I was Imke here. I was very impressed about the small multiples charts where you were able to display outliers with a different space, real estate for the visual. Is this something that can be shown in Power BI as well, or where could we?
Yeah.
And how would one design this in the report?
Yeah, good. Thank you for the question, Imke. This is one of the hardest, I would say, things to do in data visualization. So, for example, this is a similar example here. So I have almost the same type of thing right here, and let me just let me just show you how this can be done. Maybe I can just simply recreate this. So I will do it now with the Zebra BI visual. So this is the Zebra BI charts visual that can render different types of charts. And I had some actual sales versus previous year. And I had this by month, I think. All right. So this is now this would be like one chart. And this is a typical situation in any kind of BI tool. There's always one chart. And then if you want to put multiple charts, you need to now create another chart and so on. And then you have a lot of charts, and you have no concept of scaling them. So I know Imke is very good at DAX, so I'm almost sure that you would be able to do this with a normal Power BI chart. But the problem in a normal Power BI chart is now this, right? So if you try to do this in a normal Power BI chart, so you would probably do something like, all right, if this is a comparison, people would typically just shove all the information in this side-by-side column chart, right, to get this comparison to previous year. So this is already a big difference if you have a simple chart and it has no labels, and it's always this green and always this kind of gray and so on. Whereas here you have the variances, right? And then you can do it like this, like this, like this. It depends on the situation, right? But it's a complete difference, right? And now whatever you do, like if you have a lot of space, you will make it bigger. And what do you get? You just get a bigger chart. You still have those 12 values, right? And this is just the beginning of the problem. So for example, here, how we do it in Zebra BI, what we did is we made the visual responsive, which means that if you have just a small amount of space on your dashboard, you make the chart smaller and it's compact, and you just see the most important information here, which is probably like what's the sales, and is it good or bad, is it growing or not, and then you can just click and then you get this in percentage, right, which is the most compact form. But then if you make the chart bigger, now, because you have more space, you will not just get a bigger chart, but actually now Zebra BI will decide and will calculate the relative percentages and also show the relative percentages. And then if you make it even bigger, now I got to that IBCS template that I was showing right now. So this is the difference in the charts themselves. But now back to your question of the small multiples. What do you do in Power BI? So typically people will now take, okay, now let's break this down by what business units, for example. Now I will take the business units, let's do a group of business units. You know, where do you put it? You know, typically you would, let's just click and see what Power BI will decide.
It's like, yeah, it's like a
nothing
legend.
Happens. Yeah. At the moment, nothing happens. If you're not, I mean, if you're familiar with Power BI, you'll understand that now you have this option to drill down. Okay. So this would be a typical way. So which means that, you know, now I can drill down, and now what I get, you know, I don't see all the things. I cannot compare, you know, what do you do with this? You know, it's really, there's really no way how to do it here. Then, okay, maybe you can put it to into the legend. I'm sorry, I can't really, no, I'm sorry.
No,
I
you
would
have
probably
two
need to
values.
switch to now the stacked chart. And now I would put stack chart, and yeah, but I'm not even sure if it works with
No, you
two
cannot
values.
put anything into the legend as
Yeah.
long as you have multiple values in
You
the
see,
multiple items in the values.
exactly that's really no way how to do it. So
no way, no.
Yeah, you know, so now I can do this, right? So, and this is
exactly,
so, you know, you can stack things, but then you don't have the comparisons. And even if it's stacked, you don't, so now you don't even see the trends, you don't have the comparisons. So really nothing.
Useless.
So it's hard to do, and it's really useless. And it's not just the problem of Power BI, it's in all normal, you know, BI tools. This would be like the default, and we just feel it's a bad default, right? So now I'll just remove this, and let's see what happens here. For example, if I go back to my nice waterfall chart, sorry, I just love waterfall charts. And now what I'll do is now I'll just click here. What happens here is that the Zebra BI visual will actually,
what did you do? I didn't.
I just clicked. I just want to add my business, the groups of business units. So I just clicked. All right. So basically, what happens?
Drill down or what?
Yeah, no, it's not really the drill down. What happens is I'm putting my data field into the group placeholder.
Group,
right?
Okay.
Yeah, group, because Power BI does have this concept of grouping, right?
Yes.
And you know, you can group it, and actually Power BI does the query behind. It's optimized for that, really. The only problem is that the visualizations cannot handle that, right? So we are using this ability of Power BI to do the, you know, slicing and dicing, but only to visualize it. So when we get this data for several groups, we just draw the small multiples automatically. So just Zebra BI does this, right?
Okay.
And it's already scaled. So, and you see, this is now a complete different situation.
And it's one DAX query.
It's exactly. This is one DAX query. This is why this is extremely fast, right? Even, I mean, now I'm resizing. We are even doing like, you know, we are changing the layout in real time while you're moving the mouse, because it's just one query, and that's why we also and we have, of course, a lot of like optimization algorithms that, you know, things are drawn quite fast and so on, right? So this is completely automatic here. Of course, then you can change it. Then you can do things like, I don't know, you can show the grid or not. So you can design it still a little bit. But the whole idea here is, you know, that this concept of scaling is now possible, because now there's another benefit of having all of the charts in one visual. Now we can handle the scaling because it's inside the visual. And now the visual, if it's smart enough, will actually, you know, take care that all the charts are rendered in the same scale, right? Now the visual can do this because we have all the data we need. We can calculate the heights and so on. So now I understand. Yep.
Sorry for interrupting you. Sure. Is there a maximum number of group items you can use?
Not really. There's no, I mean, there is, it's not limited in the number of elements. So I think I have shown this example. If I will find it quickly, I did, we discussed this COVID, the stock market example, right? So here, I'm drawing, let me just, so here I have a small multiple with 200 charts. 200 charts, and each of those charts, and this is daily data, so it's from, you know, for several months. So this is a lot of data points. I look at this, I mean, this is 200 charts. And if I now do it, I mean, it'll probably, I'll change this date. So now it's recalculating 2 or 3 seconds for 200 charts, which is insane. I mean, for Power BI, that, you know, this is because it's all in one visual. So it's one query, and then of course also optimized display and so on. Of course, you will sooner or later, I mean, if you would put like 1,000 charts, of course, it'll become a little bit more slow, because then, you know, even the rendering, the browser needs to render all of the charts. But you also have then other speed optimization is in place. So not everything is actually renders. So we have this call of dynamic windowing algorithms and stuff. When you're scrolling down, then the things will draw invisibly behind it and things like that. Yeah. So this is the small multiples. Now, the challenge here is the scaling, right? This is the hardest part of data visualization. Now I have 2.5 million here, 2.2 million. This is smaller. Then you have some really small elements. All right, they're small. So you understand they're much smaller. They're not so important. If you want to see the details, all right, you can click and then enlarge, right? But first, you have the visual overview and the visual comparison. And this is very important in Power BI, to understand how important things are, to get, you know, the idea, do the visual comparison. Then, of course, you can dive into the details. And now, because of this, when you're doing the scaling, then you will arrive at different, much harder, still harder problems. Like, for example, now, if I do it with a business unit, and I have a lot of business units, you know, all right, I see that and so on. But first of all, I have a lot of small elements here. And this is what will happen in a normal situation. You have maybe, you know, 20,000 customers or much more, right? And then, you know, a lot of them will be smaller and so on, not so important. So that's why you need more advanced ways how to visualize this. And this is also a couple of ideas from the IBCS. First of all, use the top N. But in my case here, I will now just say, all right, let me just show the top 10 elements like this. And maybe in this case, top 8. And now you see what happens with all the rest. It's not just filtered out like you would get in a normal Power BI visual. Everything else is automatically calculated by the visual into this others category. So now I understand what are my top business units, but I also have the feeling, you know, what is left behind, right? And if I would have a lot of revenue in the others category, I would know that I need to expand this a little bit more and show more charts until this others, you know, category, you know, is small enough that I really understand the whole business. And then there's
that's really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
So this concept is extremely powerful. I mean, and then, you know, then we also have the algorithms such as the automatic algorithm here that does this split here. So now you see, now this is the next stage then, you know, that the visual actually checks each chart where it can be placed, because the second two charts are much smaller than this variables business unit. They're just displayed in this cell here, right? Oh, and now I have even more space, so now I can even show a little bit more data. So it's all about optimization. What exactly do you show? Also, you know, how you do your labels. For example, if you will compare the options for data labels in our visual compared to all the other native visuals, there are many more options, right? Because you need this control over the labels. For example, you know, showing the K character in each number. here does not really make sense. I mean, it's K, 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 K. That's a lot of redundancy, right? And redundancy is also something that in the IBCS standard it's not very welcome in IBCS standard, right? So if you show everything or almost everything in K, in thousands, why not just say, all right, I'll display this in thousands, but instead of having those Ks in all of my labels, I will simply decide to show the data, to show the units in my title, right? So, you know, and ZebraBI just does this automatically. It will show up. Now everything here is in K, and now I have a clean number, right? So I have one more space for one letter, right? And you don't necessarily need all the numbers, right? So then, you know, we have this label density here. So you can say, all right, just show me the most important stuff, like the first and the last, and, you know, the minimum, the maximum, you know, the biggest ones, or the you know, the smallest ones. And now it's, you know, cleaned up and very optimized. It's just one visual. It's basically just a few clicks. All right, that was a long answer to one question.
No, that's really amazing. Yeah. So that's the automatic layout that you choose.
This is the we have several layouts here in the small multiples. There are several layouts. So the default is like, we call it smart rows. So, you know, it will just have, you just basically get a matrix, and the matrix is automatically calculated so that, you know, for each row has like a local maximum calculated automatically. So it looks like this. But then in most cases, this automatic algorithm actually performs better, I would say. But these are still, we just leave a few options here. Then you also have this largest first that for some other cases would maybe work better. But most of the times this automatic layout works best for the small multiples.
And in the, I'm not yet sure how about the difference between the Power BI part of it and the enormous Zebra part of it. But what you showed first was some comments in the reports that are specific to the current month, or specific to the selected filters and view.
Great question.
So how does that work?
Great question. This is also one part where Power BI does not really have a there's really no good solution in Power BI, in native Power BI. Also I must say that we don't have this here, an option for this in ZebraBI Visual. So what I have here is a simple dummy stupid text box. So this is it's a static text box, right? And I'm using those links here, but if I now change, you know, the month or something, you know, that everything changes. So these are completely static text boxes. If you want to make this the commentary dynamic, then the only way is to actually bring your comments into your Power BI model, and then use not the text boxes, but then use at least a matrix or a multi-card or something to display the comments. And of course, you need to have the comments table marked with the month and year and everything else that you need to that you want to respond, and relate it, do a relationship through the month and year, for example, back to your fact table, right? So that this slicer will also filter the table of comments here. And then the nicest way, if you want to have the complete control over the design of this commentary part, is to actually do it in a Power App, and then use the Power App visual to actually display those comments.
So then I could keep the formatting.
Yes.
HTML.
Yes. In a Power App, you can just simply add any kind of elements, because, you know, you design the whole app and you design like one part. How does the comment really look like? And you can number them and everything else. And then you do it. Then you use the custom visual for the Power App here inside the Power BI.
That would definitely not have crossed my mind to use Power Apps to display data instead of collecting it. So,
Yes, but the
yes.
beautiful part of that. So I will just open this while we are talking because I do have some. So I do have an example for that actually. It's not finished, so it's not designed as it should be. But that's the most powerful way of doing comments, dynamic comments in Power BI, because of course you can show them, but then you can also write back from Power BI, write the comment back to some database. So you can have both in the same place. You display them, but then also every end user can write the comments back. So I'm not sure if I have a working example now. I'm not sure. So this is now the Power App. I hope it'll. Okay. So like this, and now this is a Power App. So okay, it's a little bit designed, but not too much. So I could have added also, the numbers and so on. Now this is completely dynamic, and the other benefit is now they are listed here. They should respond to the month as well, but I'm not sure if this will work now. Not really working here. So, but it should, and then any user, also in a view mode, in service anywhere, can click and now write the comment, select which year, for which month and for which year the comment relates to, and then you confirm it, and this will now put the data back to write the data back to the database. So this is how you do the write back. Right. This is not a finished example, but it's going to be one of my next webinars actually. So so I'll do a session for this as well, and then you can even do things like this. Like you can add a comment in a report page tooltip. This is a nice trick here that I did. It's yeah, I tested this. It works quite nicely, and yeah, the whole thing is you need a comment table. And it needs to be related, through your month year ID to your calendar or other dimensions. You can also relate it to a business unit or other dimensions that you have in your model.
That's really nice. Yeah. Great.
Cool. Thanks. All right. Any other questions?
We got a single question from Martin, who wants to know if this IBCS rules are used also outside Germany and France.
Oh yeah, they are. They definitely started in Germany. I think I have so I have lots of examples here. So if somebody wants to see more examples and so on, I can share my presentation. Just write to me and I'll share. So these are the things that I was explaining. So these are a couple of for example, references that use. So these are our clients, Zebra BI users. So they obviously use IBCS because they're using the Zebra BI visuals. So most famously, maybe Coca-Cola, Microsoft is using our visuals. So they are using IBCS, at least in one part of Microsoft, but also Facebook and other companies, and also global companies like PwC, KPMG. Duracell is an American company. Uber, YouGov is UK-based. Philips in the Netherlands is a very famous case. They were an early adopter of IBCS. We were using it for years in Excel and other tools, and now they are using it in Power BI with the Zebra BI visuals. Amnesty International. So there are quite a lot of companies outside of Germany. But most of them are still I would say the majority of them are still from German-speaking areas. Yeah. All right. Then maybe now, if we still have what, let's say 5 to 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So we need to bring this to the end. Maybe I would also show the tables and how to combine tables and charts, which is also like a very important aspect of Power BI. And also, I think even in practice, most of business reports are actually some kind of a table chart combination. And even me as a consultant, I would say if you want to implement IBCS, start with your tables first, because it's the sweetest, the easiest way, it's the quick win. So instead of having like, instead of having tables like this, right? Or even, I mean, in a matrix, and even if somehow manage to design this in Power BI, I mean, it's quite a challenge. So if you have a lot of table-based reports like that, then you probably already have some nice structures here, by business unit, and you have the right measures. Typically, you would have all the things already here. So it makes sense to start with the tables like this. So let me just maybe let's just go. I'll just clean this up a little bit, and let's start with so now I have, so let's do it like, all right. First of all, I have like my groups, my business unit groups, and I'll do a comparison to previous year. Let's start with that. So now I have simple actual versus previous year comparison. Actually, let me just start with a completely blank. I'll just remove this. That one was already designed, so I'll just start with a complete blank. So actual, you need a measure, of course, for the previous year, and a separate measure in Power BI for the plan, for example. Then you would do like a breakdown. So this is now the second Zebra BI visual. We have just two visuals, right? So, but they can render different types of charts. So now, again, this one is completely responsive. So you get the very basic IBCS report right there, just by doing this, right? So it's just by default. Now you have the previous year, you have the actuals. Now you have the variance, which is calculated automatically by Zebra BI. And it's not just, it's not just a column. All the elements are interactive. So if you click, you can sort ascending or descending. And here, even by relative variance, fastest growing or fastest declining, we need to do something with this business unit, obviously, and so on, right? Then you start building your hierarchies. So for example, if I bring in my division, now I have a hierarchical report. Again, here you would get the expand collapse options, right? This is quite important that you have, a nice collapsed first page, but then people can drill down, right? So typically, of course, here in the category, people have a lot of levels, and basically there's no limitation on the number of levels here, right? But now it gets more interesting, right? Because now you can add the plan. And this would be a typical business report. I mean, every monthly report every business report in Excel looks something like this. You have the previous year, you have the actual, and then you have the plan, right? And here it's the same in Power BI, right? Now you can do it like this. Then you can decide, all right, maybe you don't need all of the charts. Maybe just focus on the variances here, on the absolute variances. You do it like this, you make sure that the structure of your columns, is always the same, the same order of columns, that things are always on the same place, right? So that you're consistent. And this is the report right there, right? So this is my revenue for October. Now, if I want to add a comparison, this is the October results, but I'm also interested in the year-to-date results. Now you can again bring in the grouping. The grouping always gives you, more power. Like for example, here, now, of course, in my Power BI model, I'm using period calculations as a separate dimension. Now I can do great things like this, put the period calculation in my grouping. And now I created two groups in my table. The first one displays, now I need to clean this up a little bit, so I'll just hide a few columns here. So I'll just hide this. So now I have like the actuals, and now I have the previous year. Maybe even this one I changed to like that. So you see now it already fits here. I could actually bring back the previous here maybe. So, you know, you decide what exactly you want to have here. And this would be a typical business report already. So you have your monthly results, you have your year-to-date results. The most important thing, which is, you know, the variance to plan, are we on plan or not, is here. Maybe you bring in the grand total. Sorry, where is it? Grand total, you know, maybe rename it if you need, and that's it. This is, you know, it's it's a typical business report. So this is how an IBCS compliant report should look like. IBCS compliant table actually should look like, right? And then you have, of course, variations of that. Good. Yeah, I do hope that this gave you some ideas about the IBCS. As you see, it looks different from native Power BI. Native Power BI looks very, very different, but I hope that it also makes sense, you know, that the reports that I was showing, that, you know, they make more sense than those beautiful reports that you actually typically would see in Power BI, but they simply do not provide such insight, I would say, and they are not so understandable and not so actionable, which is the goal of IBCS. And I hope that also this presentation today gave you some ideas. Now, if you want to, if this was interesting, if you're interested about the concept and so on, we do have a lot more video recordings. We are doing the webinars. So if I just click here, just to show you, there's actually, I think, 25 hours of recorded material, because we are doing a lot of webinars. So actually, my next webinar is next week, and this one is going to be quite interesting for business analysts. I'll go into a lot more detail, but you also have other things here, you know, a dedicated webinar on small multiples, DAX tricks, and so on. So this is a nice resource here, I guess. And we do have a help page with Power BI examples that you can download. So if you go to our website, zebrabi.com, you will see this basically this menu resources. So maybe I encourage you to actually click here, because now you can download the examples that I was showing. So we have lots of examples, interesting examples here, and like this sales dashboard that I did. And here you can just simply download the PBIX. So you will see the files and the income statements and so on. So this is a nice resource here. Hopefully this will be helpful. And yeah, if you like the visuals, now I have again at the end a good news and a bad news. The good news is the basic version of the Zebra BI visuals is completely free, and you just simply import it from the app source. So you just go into your Power BI, click here on the 3-dot menu and say get more visuals. And now you can simply import the Zebra BI visuals from Microsoft App Source, because they are on Microsoft App Source. Just, you know, search for Zebra and you'll get both visuals, and then you simply add the visual and you'll have the I already have it, right? And the and it's completely free. The basic version is completely free. Of course, it's limited, right? So you cannot do everything that I was showing today, but you can do some really nice things with it. And then, yeah, the bad part, the bad news is that, of course, the pro version, which has a lot of advanced features and so on, is a paid visual, because this is actually what we do for a living, and we have a whole team here that develops the visuals and so on. So hopefully this will help you create understandable and actionable reports in Power BI. Thanks.
We've got to thank you. Thanks a lot. Was pretty interesting, and I think useful additional information for those who don't already know that is that even though this is a Power BI user group, you also produce these two visuals for Excel, right?
Yeah. We have a very similar tool also for Excel. It's an Excel add-in. Of course, it works slightly differently because in Excel you expect it to work a little bit different. So it follows the logic of Excel, whereas the visuals for Power BI follow the logic for Power BI. But you can produce the same things, even small multiples in Excel, and it's quite crazy. Also the tool for Excel. So welcome to try it out. Also, it's all on our web page, and we do have a 30-day free trial. So you have more than enough time to test it out and so on.
Wow, and you get a lot of good amazing feedback in the chat. Intian is saying, do we still need other visuals? And
very good question. I can give you my answer. Of course, I'm biased here, but I'm using our two visuals. And then on top of that, I'm using for some geographical representation. I'm trying to use some map visuals, which are also not very good in Power BI. But for geographic visuals, we don't have a solution at the moment, at least. And sometimes I also use the scatter plot, right? The scatter plot. Actually, from the native visuals, in my personal opinion, the scatter plot is actually the best one. So it actually works quite well. And then for everything else, ZBRBI visuals, that's my answer. Of course, I'm biased here.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, cool. What do we have else? Great session, ZBRBI is gold, or I really used to like the standard Power BI visuals. Now I no longer want to use them. a lot of applause. So.
Thanks guys. Thanks guys. Also make sure to try out the income statements, right? How to do this chart in ZBRBI, how to make sure that Power BI understands what is the subtotal and so on. We have really crazy features like, this would be a normal Power BI, normal waterfall chart, and just simply right click and say, all right, this is a kind of a result here. And then you can also turn the costs around and things like that. So these are things that are simply impossible in Power BI, but work quite nicely with a little bit of the Zebra magic here.
Yeah, and you also can control how the difference is calculated by just clicking on the
exactly. Yeah.
Amazing tool.
There are many ways. Yeah, you can even change the calculation, right? So not actual minus plan, but plan minus actual. Especially if you have lots of measures, you can, it's very flexible. Yeah.
Cool.
All right, guys, you need to stop me.
Yeah,
Lars.
I do that right now. Does anyone have additional questions? Otherwise, we just close this session.
Yeah, I have one.
Okay.
It's Uwe. Me. Yeah, Uwe. Correct. I used the time during the session to visit your webpage and to gather some information about how much this is, what the licensing is, and whatever. Because as you can also already see in the chat, it's quite impressive what you can do with this visuals. So, but that left one question regarding licensing. On your web page, it is declared as some kind of per user per month licensing, and it's for a visual. Yeah, it depends on the number of users you have, between 2 and 5 euros per user and month.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What do you mean with by user? What is a user? Is it the number of Power BI Pro licenses in my company?
Not
so-called
not
potential
necessarily. Yeah, not necessarily, because you might have a lot more Power BI users that will not really use Zebra BI visuals. So basically, I mean, to put it simply, we simply count the number of total users, so designers and the viewers that are either creating reports with Zebra BI visuals or consuming them.
Yeah, okay.
So it's sort of like Power BI Pro, but not every Power BI Pro user, of course.
If I have some kind of 200 Pro licenses, and I just want to provide my financial department with
then you can just buy 20 or something.
20 people.
Yeah.
So okay, understand that.
Yeah. And then this is the price, and this price includes both visuals and technical support, and also all the new versions, right? Because in Power BI, it's very important that the visuals follow the developer. Sorry.
It's for both visuals.
Yeah, everything. This is just one price for just everything, and
okay,
including the technical support. Yeah. Okay, maybe it's not written. Thanks for this feedback. So I'll let our marketing guys to make sure that this is free. Yeah.
I thought I was informing on the table visual.
No, everything, and the small multiples, everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's quite nice.
Yeah, I think it's of course it's some investment, right? But if you know how to use it, it's not. I mean, we have a lot of very satisfied clients, big companies, small companies. So I hope it will work for you. And if it's if you can't afford it, there's still the free version, which is limited, but it still works for at least the basic reports, I would say.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Very cool, very impressive. I don't see further questions in the chat. Last chance.
I think everybody now wants to go home if you're still in your office, or wants to buy to have a beer or something. So I won't make this any longer. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Lars, for having me.
Thanks for being here and doing the presentation. It is really, really awesome.